Welcome back. You're watching Big Deal, and we are discussing how to increase the domestic fundraising for the homegrown private equity as well as venture capital community. Gopal, Jain, we were discussing how it is very critical, very important. Government has come up with fund of funds. SIDBI is there, but we need more. What more can be done to change the trajectory and also to infuse more domestic capital in this space?
Absolutely. Nisha, as an IIT, and I've had a front row view of how over the last 60 years we've exported our best brains abroad. Similarly, currently we are exporting the ownership of our private sector abroad. And we need to undo it. We need to make Indian private equity Indian. And the way to do that is to link it to domestic savings. We are the world's second largest savings factory. And this can be done in a very simple fashion. You can kill two birds with one stone or one arrow, whatever you say, which is to operationalize a proposal in 2022 budget, which was about creating more SIDBI fund of funds, more SRI fund of funds, with the government anchoring a set of fund of funds. This was a proposal in 2022. The time has come to operationalize that proposal. With the same 10,000 crores, what this means is that you'll have 50,000 crores fund of funds. Fund of funds is an asset class that retail investors can invest directly in. So what it does is it creates institutional investors like fund of funds who, as Gopal Srinivasan mentioned, can back domestic managers, also first-time managers, and it allows domestic retail investors to invest in fund of funds where the chances of losing capital are so much lower than investing directly in private companies or investing in funds.
Market regulator every time for any asset class is very critical about safeguarding the interest of the retail investors. Ashwin, you want to jump in on the kind of risk factors and why it's not opening up too much? Is it still considered a risky asset class where more sophisticated investors would do better?
Yeah, Nisha, I think just by going back into history, I think it's taken a long time for domestic Indian retail to enter the mutual fund market, right? If you're seeing the SIPs every month, record numbers are coming. It's taken years for this to happen. I have no doubt the same will happen in the private markets. It takes, our fund lives are anything between 5 to 7 to 10 years even. So for us to establish our track record and convince retail investors, I think that will take some time. So typically institutions come in with larger checks, they anchor funds, and seed the fund managers, and the next step is then retail and HNIs come in. Here it's actually been quite the opposite, where a lot of family offices and retail has started to invest in private funds, and we're waiting for some of the larger institutions to actually come in a big way.
Right. So that's one way of looking at it. Gopal Srinivasan, how would you mitigate the risk factors and also the government's perception that the pension money should go in extremely safe asset classes?
The D word, Nisha, diversification. Basically, the way we make sure that all this 250 trillion of savings, whatever extent, 20 trillion to 10 trillion goes safely, is to create a channel or like a fund of funds like SIDBI has done, where you basically use these channels of fund of funds. They can be government influenced. They could be the pension managers already mandated by EPFO or NPS to manage. Make them get the right set of professionals who can make sure that diversification, diligence is done with a depth of professionalism that is needed. It is not a rocket science. Indian origin individuals are running fund of funds for the rest of the world. They would be delighted, the fourth D word, to actually come back to the fifth D word, the Desh, to actually perform this role very, very happily. There is no rocket science. You are an outstanding TV anchor, but outstanding TV anchors were not there in 30 years ago in India, but they came. Here we are all over the place managing fund of funds. So we need this fund of funds channel. We need a fund of funds channel for retail investors. I understand from Gopal Jain, some 10 lakh mutual fund, a special, more risky mutual fund category is coming. We could create categories where mutual fund managers can run large fund of funds from retail money for VC, PE. HDFC has already started something. So there is a very, very clear way to do it, and that is with diversification, with diligence, with the depth of professionalism, with talent that is available. No, there is no magic to it.
All right, so the path has already been set, but a lot more needs to be done. Gopal Jain, the government is in line with the thought process, but as part of IVCA, the industry body, investors have been making representations to the government. Any key wish list from the budget? It's just around the corner. Are we expecting anything, or what can the government do?
First is to start with measures that have been already announced. And I've talked about one of those, which is the 2022 budget proposal around fund of funds. The second is again, in 2022 budget, we had the Damodharan committee. I said those are two instances of kind of low-hanging fruit, which are just awaiting implementation as opposed to fresh proposals.
Yes.
Right? And then, as Gopal, Srinivasan and Ashvin have mentioned, this is the time. We are not inventing the wheel here. Pension funds globally have had a very successful experience of investing in this asset class. Insurance and banks have had a certain experience. And through diversification, in the case of fund of funds, setting up thresholds, you can manage risk very effectively. We've also recommended to the government a couple of other things, which is like, extend real estate type long-term capital gain benefits to reinvestment from AIFs. So if you have capital gains in AIFs, you can save those capital gains by reinvesting in AIFs. And similarly, a proposal of extending IFSCA to Mumbai. The time has come for that. That, if you want to grow IFSCA further, let's say 10x, you should extend IFSCA to Mumbai.
IFSCA to Mumbai, that's a very big ask there. And I would wait to see how the government is really taking it. But a lot of effort is going into the development of Gift City as a commercial hub by the government recently. Now, Ashwin, any more suggestions? And how do you see this really panning out with government's effort and also the euphoria around investment? Because I would say when we talk about career plays, the private equity and VC players have substantially been successful compared to the other career classes, in my view.
Yeah, Nisha, I think, we mentioned it earlier. I think clarity around taxation would be very helpful around AIFs. I think, we've all had experiences with portfolio companies having, again, angel tax issues. So simple measures which have been spoken numerous times before. I think clarity around those would be very helpful. We're hopeful that some of this will come in the current budget. I think, Gift City is a very welcome move. I think, our peers are domiciled outside. I think we will see more and more Indian fund managers work out of Gift City. I think, that can be a really big move for us. Having said that, I think, the tailwinds are there. I'm only hoping that, like some of the larger family office, like some of the retail investors in India, larger institutions will come and support us and will actually honestly take most of the gains. The gains today are going to endowments outside of India. And if those can be had by Indian institutions and then reinvested in India to promote further startups, I think that will be a very welcome change.
Right. Great points there, Ashwin. Final comments, Gopal, Srinivasan, any final comments on how soon do you see this really materializing? And we have discussed a whole host of efforts that can be taken. But I would also like to point out that the Indian regulators have been very slow and very cautious in opening the kind of caps that other institutions like banks, insurance, pension funds can have on different asset classes. So how do you see that really changing?
Nisha, first I want to say that actually Indian regulators have moved pretty fast. The way SEBI is moving is really at quite a lightning speed. A lot of the action actually has to now happen outside SEBI. So I would think of 3 steps. One, make sure that this fund of funds channel for pension money is set up as fast as possible. I think it's maybe 2-3 years away maximum because NPS already has enabling provisions. 2, as you have been put in your own tweet with, you were standing with Chris Wood. Chris Wood himself has correctly said that if you were to normalize LTCG rates for public markets with other markets, private markets, it will only be a short term before the market accepts it. So make sure LTCG penalty is not there on private markets. That would be step number 2 in my mind. And the third step in my mind is fundamentally to ensure that, if you want the entire foreign funds who are investing in India to signal to them very, very strongly that we welcome them in India, but we also expect them to manage Indian money. One such signal with a very, very powerful FM like we have with Madam Nirmala Sitharaman or our Prime Minister saying, please come participate in India, but leave something behind. Kuch to chodo table pay. I think that message will mean that just like Sequoia has now become Indian in India, Matrix is on its way to becoming Indian in India, most of the foreign funds will also create an Indian side pocket, which will further spur our goal. India will become, like IT services, the global hub for investment management. That is my firm conviction, my dream, and my desire.
Gopal, you've given a great vision, and thank you for following my tweets. And of course, Chris Wood also shared with me that he's just amazed at how the domestic institutional investors have really caused the entire surge in the equity markets. And he was saying that once the market falls, the FIIs will get a chance to come in probably. So this is a good situation to be in, but great points made on Atmanirbharta, which is also in line with the government's agenda, and probably a lot of efforts will be taken in this direction to back our own entrepreneurs as well, instead of backing only on foreign capital. Thank you so much, Gopal Srinivasan, Gopal Jain, as well as Ashvin Chadha for joining us on this very, very interesting discussion. And thanks to all our viewers for tuning in.